I'm Robert Cavuoto, and today on Sonic's Perspectives, we are speaking with Johannes Eckerström of Avatar for the release of their new album, Dance Devil Dance, that's coming out February 17th. Congratulations. Awesome album. I love it. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, a lot of hard work must have went into this album, but I think it's killer.
Yeah, well, I think, I don't know if you noticed, but the other couple of years ago, we were hit by a plague.
Yeah.
And it kind of changed the pace of everything. Like, we did Hunter Gatherer and quickly made the call to not postpone the release of it. We were actually forced to postpone the release for like 3 months because there was a whole series of ducks that need to get in a row right at the beginning of the pandemic where we didn't fully understand what we even could do. But that aside, that came out, in early 2020. No, August 2020. And then we were supposed to have hit the road a lot, which obviously we didn't. We did some other cool things. We did the live streams throughout the month of January there. That was great. And we did our music videos and all kinds of things. But that being said, a lot of more extra time on our hands than we thought. And I don't know, from speaking, like, we are kind of 3 guys in the band that start songs, and then 5 of us finish songs together. We have a very democratic band in that sense that everyone really gets to be involved with it and have their say. But 3 of us kind of started. And speaking for myself, I kind of, when I felt all this extra time, it's like I made a little folder on the computer on the desktop that I named Solo. And I was supposed to be like, now I finally have time to write good music or what. I don't know what I was thinking exactly, but I think it was just an exercise in freedom.
Yeah.
And that it was that extra wiggle room to see if what comes out of me, if it's really without any prejudice and where it needs to go or whatever. But very quickly, what happens is that the best ideas were the kind of ideas that I would go to the other guys with and ask the guitar players to re-record the guitars that I've been putting in kind of sloppily, and meaning that my best solo material is, as always, barely good enough to be Avatar material. So gravitating towards that, but yeah, it gave us some extra time, not doing other things, so more dedicated writing time, for better or worse, I guess. But most importantly, I think that meant the opportunity to create some distance between you and your ideas occasionally.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. The press release mentioned that you said metal has lost touch with the devil. And with the title Dance Devil Dance, can you elaborate on that sentiment a little bit more?
Well, there are a bunch of things. Well, musically speaking, one thing that kind of hits me after a while is, like, if I look at my own journey, how I got into metal, it was Halloween were incredibly important for me. And when I was 12 years old, that's kind of when I stopped cutting my hair, right?
Yeah.
And the one part that bit me early on as a young boy was the fantastic element of things, dragon and swords and, Lord of the Rings with a double bass drum underneath, all of that good stuff. And then it kind of took off into all the extreme things and all the classics and everything, really everything. But it's funny to look back now, like I keep falling deeper and deeper in love with Judas Priest, for instance.
Me too.
And I can't, for every year, and especially when we work on every new album we work on, I tend to dwell a bit deeper, because I think a lot of truth about heavy metal was, done, has been done through them, right? And I realized that, Judas Priest, they have that fantastic William Blake-ish imagery in the lyrics and all that side that lends itself to the fantastical or the Ronnie James Dio stuff and things like that. But then if you also listen, it's incredibly horny. And I think because it's such a metal historically have been such a little boys club treehouse thing, kind of lost touch with the horniness, or at least drifted away from a way where it actually sounds like actual human interaction and not just a 12-year-old boy's idea of that human interaction or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a sensual side to heavy metal, because heavy metal is a subgenre of rock and roll. Rock and roll is dance music. Dance music are for people to get close to each other and sweat on each other, you know? Right. So that aspect, to bring that line of thinking to thinking, oh, it's a sock hop in the barn or whatever, when also dealing with death metal riffs, that was a big part of the thinking here, and something I think is missing, that organicness, and something that also in the way it's performed, purely simple, how you play, how you record it, what you do with it editing wise, and what you more importantly don't do with it editing wise, that lends for an organic human feel in the performance that again lends its way to be, I don't know, bedroom music.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the devil part of it missing. It's just the funny way of saying, to make things feel lustful. I think it can be very, not always, of course. There are tons of great band doing great things always, that goes without saying. But there is a certain sterile, clinical feel to a lot of things going on that could be so easily, could be so much better. Like if we just would allow more humanity into how we produce our albums.
That reminds me of like the albums with Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast, and Motley Crue, Shout at the Devil, where it was this double entendre where you thought you were worshiping the devil, but in fact you were condemning the devil for both of those aspects. How important is, you know, that idea in your title of Dance Devil Dance?
Well, it's definitely different than those fellas. It's a short story. Start with that. I personally, when it comes to actually believing in something magical or otherworldly or higher beings and stuff, I don't. And as a band, it's fair to say that we generally don't. But while not believing in magical thinking, I still acknowledge the power of symbols. Symbols have power. Rituals have power. We go through we structure our lives around rituals and shape the world through rituals all the time. Your birthday cake, blow out the candles, sing that song, that way of acknowledgement. All people of all kinds of level of faith still in the West tend to choose to celebrate Christmas with their own definition of what goes into that, but it's still very ritualistic. I'm a Swede. Midsummer and how it's been shaped by, you know, pre-Christian and then Christian traditions and all that feed in, and the mysticism goes around it, and without believing in the not believing in it in a what's the word, theological way or whatever you should call it, I still believe in the value and strength in that, or the ritual of the rock and roll show. So there's room for, I don't know, a spiritual structure to how we approach the world that I've come to, I don't know, I have come to find it useful. I've come to find it interesting, at least at this time, and it has colored the music. And then why the devil as a symbol? Well, Dance Devil Dance, because it sounds good and it's 3 Ds in a row and it's a playful heavy metal tradition. Then if you dwell a bit deeper in the ideas of the album, I would differentiate by the archetype of a devil or the devil compared to Satan. Because Satan as a symbol is much more moldable into what you need him to be. And my idea is very much of today's day and age. I think it resonates with the works of currently going on in the States, for instance, with the Satanic Temple, for instance, and just this idea or exploration of the idea, what can religion be if you're an atheist, for instance, and it dwells there. And I like that Satan as a name is something that just the Abrahamic religions borrowed / stole from even older places and older religions of the Middle East, which means it's a name with a lineage that makes it more shapeable and moldable to what we see fit. And ultimately, how it came onto this album, during the pandemic, I this I tried to get better at running far, and by running I mean jogging, and by jogging I mean limping, but just trying to make it past that 10K by any means necessary. And if you're being a good lad doing that, if you're lucky, you get that runner's high, and I was out and running and listening to some intense rave music, actually, so ears full of boom boom boom, and pulse, I don't know where it was at, but speed metal levels of BPMs going on, and got a runner's high, and I came to the insight that, oh yeah, I am Satan. So that's the whole point. And I think we are kind of adversarial about a bunch of things, and I guess it becomes this, okay, if the other team, so to speak, or the other line of thinking, I would rather say, I try to avoid the idea of teams, but in the line of thinking, where Satan has been put as the enemy, and and whoever considers Satan an enemy, and I look at the list of what that ideology entices, I don't know, it's misogynist, it's authoritarian, and it's this divine right and authority, and it becomes all these things that ultimately, okay, but that means in that case, Satan is democracy, Satan is feminism, Satan is welfare state, Satan is a bunch of things. So, it's a good, useful, healthy, adversarial symbol. And so, yeah, that's a long-winded answer for you.
No, that's great. And you can't have Satan without God and God without Satan. So it all works together, right?
Well, that's kind of my point, I guess, that you can, and that's the idea. And ultimately, you have neither. We have each other. And this is just a symbol of exploration of, I don't know, self-exploration really through it, and finding my own potential.
I completely understand. The album is brutally heavy, yet very diverse with different musical tempos and styles. But the ribbon that ties it all together perfectly is your voice and your vocal performance.
Well, thank you very much.
How important is that musical diversity? Because like a song, Do You Feel in Control is different from Valley of Disease, which is different than Gotta Want to Buy It. So tell me about that importance of musical diversity in your career and in your albums.
Yeah, I guess it's super important. I guess it's the whole thing of something that was really something that we were able to articulate relatively early in our, I wouldn't even say a career, it was far from a career at the point, but just in existence of the band, is that never write the same song twice. And that combined with just being like, we kind of came up, we learned to play music together in a period where, as we were kind of falling in love with extreme metal and then more traditional metal and all kinds of other things at the same time, it was kind of going on all around us. That suddenly, you would have the whole formula of very harsh vocals in the verse, and then a clean vocal, as you would call it, chorus, and all those kind of things were happening with bands like Soilwork, and In Flames were doing it a lot at the time. Root to Remain was a huge point of debate for us as teenagers for all kinds of reasons, including that, and all those doors. The wall that existed between Obituary and Halloween or whatever was kind of crumbling at the time already. And I came up with huge the Haunted fans, and Peter Dolving was always very diverse, also inside of songs, and just having a very dynamic, expressive journey, even inside of just the shouty stuff. And of course, on top of it all, for me, was Devin Townsend with this, so the lines were blurring anyway. But Avatar started as a band that was going to be some kind of technical melodic death metal thing when we were very little. So that's kind of rooted in how we learned to play. The covers we were playing was in that world. So that was the starting point. And then you're just starting to add elements. And I mean, for the longest time, the rock and roll aspect of what we were doing was super important. Always been interested in melodies, and also to make harsh, extreme stuff feel melodic, even when it's not. And just that comes to, when it comes to how you emphasize things, or just the melody of words themselves, you know, in the lyricism, and then actually melodic vocals and like motifs speak and all that. I mean, it's so, yeah, the diversity, very important, but also I guess a natural evolution and curiosity. And
Yeah.
because I guess I started with growling in the band, already the thing of like, what voices can I make? It's very much an entryway, and my style of singing was kind of shaped by that.
No, that's great. My favorite song is On the Beach. What could you tell me on the background to that song?
Well, what was it's good at jazz with one of them that I started actually. So I really like when we are able to make a lot of song out of few pieces, right? And in that case, it was that rhythm of ba da ba 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 da ba da.
Right.
And the different ways you can use that and just change the dynamics or the beat, drum beats driving it to create as much of a song as possible, which is of course, you know, and it's not super revolutionizing, but it's so, you know, it smells like Teen Spirit thing. Distortion on, distortion off, distortion on, you know, between the main riff and the verses,
Right.
and then go full mosh pit speed with basically the same riff getting into the solos later. And once all that kind of starts falling into place with it, to me, I get it's in my mind, it's our Sepultura song. And it's very groovy while feeling kind of wild and loose at the same time. Usually we have historically, I think, created our best grooves in a very more controlled, you know, not funky as in literal music genre funk, but still like kind of tight, close to hi-hat and some restraint while doing something heavy or whatever, to have that. And maybe we rooted in that funky way of thinking, or even some kind of disc way of thinking. We love that offbeat open hi-hat in our band and stuff. And this was something more loose and wild and noisy, and some extra snare hits and crash cymbal and stuff inside the drum beat, which felt very refreshing for us. And you know, that was musically a prime motivator, what felt exciting about that song. And then lyrically, there is this, it's a novel, and now the author escapes me, but the novel's name is On the Beach. It came out in the 60s, and it's also, you know, very much, I guess, informed by the Cold War and the post-World War II era, in that it takes place in Australia, right as the big nuclear war happened. And everyone else on Earth, they're dead, you know, they're screwed. And the Australians know they're next, because the poison cloud, the fallout is coming their way. They can trace it. And it's just this last, I don't remember how it was a long time ago I read it, but last few weeks or month or so that is left on the planet, and how people deal with it, the family life. Or I think week 1, it's super decadent, drinking on the street or whatnot, and people living it up. The next week, everyone is getting married or trying, you know, finding romance or whatever, finding love and finding it there. And I think third week, everyone is just kind of mopey and go to church, like just trying to process that you literally watch the apocalypse that has hit the rest of the world, man-made, is slowly crawling towards you. And so with that in mind, borrow the title from there, but also probably is one of the songs that was shaped more by the angst of seeing how we collectively been dealing with the last few years as a human race. And it's hard to not arrogantly feel that it's late on Earth. It's that we are arrived very late in history, and the idea of watching a coping mechanism of when everything is blowing up, that we gather on the beach to watch the fireworks. So, you know, it's bitter, bittersweet, and playful. You know,
I got to get that book. I like those type of stories. Those
it's a classic. It bothers me so much that I can't remember the author now, but On the Beach, it's a bit of a classic, I would say.
Speaking of isolation, you guys went out into a cabin in the woods to record this. Did you guys all live together there, or was it just everybody just kind of drove in and drove out and commuted?
No. It's because it's It's my family's summer house, and it's the property is, you know, we have a main. It's old and kind of what's been restored by us, and by us I mean everyone in my family and brother-in-laws and stuff, except for me. I'm up there. I show up. I show up for the parties, but us as a family, the royal us, they've been, you know, it's been a lot of when we got it about 20 years ago, and by we I mean my parents. It hadn't really been touched since the 70s, and through the years it's been added to it in terms of running water and modern well and stuff. And one thing that was added aside the old buildings that belonged to it was an extra building called Hallandslänga, I guess in Swedish, but it was built. It's just 3 bedrooms and a little entrance hall, so really an extra guest house. No bathrooms or kitchen, anything. It's just for sleeping, and it's all in a row. You know, the door is on the middle of the buildings. To the left, you got one room. Right in front of you, the next, and to the right one. So the middle room, we put all the amps, guitar and bass amps in there. To the left became the control room, computer, some carpets on the wall, keep the couch, and all the bells and whistles that engineers know what they are, and I pay them to know, so I don't have to. And then into the right, you know, put up the drum kits and some chairs and stools around so they could play together. And yeah, that is how it was recorded. We all, you know, slept there, fed each other, hung out, ran in the woods, played with the dog, and did all that for a month.
How is that different from maybe being on tour, living together in that sort of environment?
I mean, it was even more so just the 6 of us, 5 in the band, including Jay. We enjoy each other's company. We like spending time together, nice. Genuinely. So I guess it's a sign of that we're not very successful yet, because the more successful bands I see, they don't seem to be very happy with each other. But we're doing real good so far. But I mean, even less other people. And I mean, we make sure and work really hard to try to fill our crew with people that we really like, and that hopefully really like each other and maybe even like us. But now it's even more family feel, you know, and that was the only interruptions in isolation was my family's place, right? So in the spring, so my parents came up here and there to put some seeds in the ground and prep the greenhouse. My brother came up and baked us some pizza one weekend with his sons, and some spouses of ours, you know, popped their head in. So all a very family oriented vibe, and which was really, you know, it fits us, it suits us very well, and it's also suited us. Like we were for the album prior to this, for Hunter Gatherer, we recorded that in Los Angeles in Studio City, and which was great, you know. Of course, the level of competence, the people who work there, the legitimacy and just friendliness, everything was great. It's the center of the universe as far as music business goes and stuff, and a beautiful, wonderful studio. Just that in such a slick environment, I think we ended up making slicker choices than maybe benefited the album every step of the way, and gave us a mindset that also I think affected the mix. Hunter Gatherer, I feel, is a nice, rich, low end, famous people sounding kind of mix. But in the time between that and doing this one, I know we listened to Cannibal Corpse's latest album and like, oh, those guitars sound like they're angry with me. What did I ever do to those guitars? And just, oh yeah, like to have that crisp, nice, open sound with a nice low end and stuff, you sacrifice something else in the way. And we realized in tiny little steps on the way, small choices that make sense at the time, you know, they all add up. And this time we realized this needs to be a bit more mid-rangey, gnarly, angry, and again, with more rock and roll, with dirt under the nails, fingernails, and all of that. And so we kind of created a more limiting environment for ourselves, to kind of start to build that vibe from the very beginning, and also talking through these ideas and ideals long beforehand with Jay, you know. So and it gave a completely different focus and a way different purpose for the whole thing. So just us alone in the woods, you know, taking care of each other and far away from any glitz and glam, in a home environment, because it's my family's place, but it's a place we have been going to write or hang out or party or whatever through the years a lot as a band. So it's a home, it's everybody's home in the band when we're there together, you know. So it's really ours and no one else can reach it. No one would know where to find it on a map. So so that really changed the mindset, I think, and gave this album a different kind of sense of urgency.
No, I like the grittiness of it. I think it's great. The sonics are tremendous, well produced.
Thank you.
You know, your stage persona is very charismatic, and Figure reminds me of Alice Cooper in some ways. He tends to blur the lines between his alter ego and the real Alice Cooper, and you really only know it when he's maybe talking about his stage persona in the third person. Is there any similarities between you and your persona, or is it just makeup to you?
I guess it's neither of those two options. I never felt like a different person or like that I played a character. So in that sense, it's not a switch. It doesn't. I am always Johannes, you know. Then at the same time, I don't think it's enough to say that it's just you know, just paint either, because obviously it becomes part of. We were talking rituals before.
Yeah.
And it's really something that that brings something out, I think, but it's still me, just amplified or liberated. Even I might call it a liberated self. One way I would liken it to is probably, I mean, if we look Friday to Sunday in life, right? You are at the office on Friday afternoon and you're well behaved and comb your hair just right or whatever, you know, and you're 100% you. You just present yourself professionally because at your job, and but that is what it is. But you're still you. And then it's Friday evening, and you know, kick off put your feet up, and eat chips in front of the TV, just guzzle and burp and fart. It's just you know, just what you would lose, and put the feet up and all that. Saturday night is disco time. You make yourself all pretty. You wear eyelash extensions and your slutty underwear and whatever, and go out and party. And that's still you know. Just love you in a different setting. And then Sunday, it's Sunday roast at grandma's, and you're still you know, but you're just more conservative underwear. And all those are valid and true if you know, if you're true to yourself in those settings, and just then there are just that different settings, different opportunities to express a facet of who you are, you know, because humans are complex. So it's me, but obviously I'm not behaving here with you as I would behave on stage, but still no character. But still, that being said, in other aspects, very heavily influenced, of course, by Alice Cooper, for instance. It's something someone you would see very early on growing up. I guess because it's this. I think that's the difference when Avatar is theatrical rather than theater, if that makes sense.
Yes, totally.
So because, you know, there are certain things on stage that we execute, that we plan to be, that needs to be in a certain way. You know, it's somewhat scripted, except it's not on paper. But in that, so we borrow from theater in that sense, that it's not just a rock and roll show of playing the songs, shaking that ass. You know, sometimes you have to shake an ass and change hats or whatever. That adds to it. But I guess it's theatrical or theater based on a true story, or autobiographical, in the sense that it all comes from that.
No, that's very insightful. I want to be respectful to your time. Do you have a minute for a couple more questions?
Yeah, we can do a couple.
Sure. You know, what you're talking about, the theatrical aspect of it, it reminds me. Do you write songs specifically for theatrical performance, or does that come after the song's already been written?
It comes after. It's important to really, and I think this is important for any and every band, to make something work like this that we are doing, and I think it works. It has to, at the beginning and the end of the day, it has to be about the music. That has to come first. because you see a lot of bands otherwise that work on their comic book and outfits and shoes and photos and la da da, and then the music is just a big fat nothing, copying something that's already out there, just performed to a, you know, just a lesser version of it.
Yeah.
And all that, while we create music with full passion and focus, and then at the end of it, when it starts to come together and starts to turn into something, one way of us to measure to ourselves the quality of what we're doing in our own minds is like, just what does it make you see, turn very visual like that. And along the way you kind of answer the question, what does this music look like? And that leads to music videos, to outfits, to stage show, and everything. But before that, it just has to be music first. It just simply has to work with your eyes closed.
I agree with you. I agree with you. My last question, you come into the United States, and have you started working on your set list, and what songs do you think will be in the set list from this new album?
Well, I don't want to spoil too many surprises, but we got a title track, and we got a single that's doing real well right now. So those are, you know, high contenders, of course.
Of course.
What I can say, I'm really excited. Like, we will play a good chunk of new material, because we simply believe in it a lot.
Yeah, I did.
And of course, there's certain songs that we are happy to play on every show that we do until we die. That being said, we made some small sacrifices when it comes to the classics, if you will, to put back in. There's a couple of tunes that involuntarily maybe have turned into what you would call a deep cut at this point.
I like that.
And the way it's coming together now, and we before we go to the States now in spring, we will do UK and Central Europe and whatnot. And the way it's coming together, it's been I am extremely excited for this set and what we're putting in it, both musically and the show elements of it. I think we are in the business of topping ourselves and finding ways to feel challenged and find a way to feel like beginners, and just to try to do little things that we haven't done before. So, you know, trying to hit that next level. And I think we are.
Great. Well, I'll see you in New York City when you come out there. So I'm looking forward
to it.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your time, Johannes. It was an honor.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.